Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Wrap Up. With me, as always, Dan Myers. I'm Nick Buckler. Dan, right away, we're going to jump out to some breaking news about the show, The Wrap Up. We all know Dan has been the co-host of this show since the beginning, and he's been volunteering his time. And Dan has been officially brought onto the team now, hired in here at Shelby TV to officially be a part of the team for good, hopefully. So, Dan, congratulations on that.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Top story today, though. Chris Froome wins the Tour de France. That's right, not the Tigers' demise. The Tour de France has stolen headlines. Chris Froome wins his second Tour de France in 3 years. And he was born in Kenya, although he is British. He was schooled in South Africa. He had a strong Stage 10 ride, and that led him to the victory, Dan.
I just don't know how they do it. That is just incredible. I can barely ride a bike at the gym for more than 10 minutes, let alone, how the 3 days that they're going. It's just incredible. So, wow. Yeah, much respect for those guys.
Yeah, I must say I don't know much about the Tour de France. Ever since Lance Armstrong fell off, or whatever happened there, we're not going to go into that. But good for Chris Froome. Although he's not American, we still... It's freaky what they do out there on those bikes. I haven't ridden a bike since about 8th grade. I had my Huffy, and that was really exciting. Enough of that. We don't want to, we want to cover some stuff that's going to keep people glued to the tube, Johnny Cueto gets traded to the Royals yesterday in the Major League headlines for Brandon Finnegan, a strong left-handed reliever, as well as two other prospects. And if you didn't think the Royals were the real deal before, they have an 11.5 game lead entering Monday over the Tigers, 7.5 over the Twins. If you didn't think they were the real deal before, they just landed probably the top pitcher on the market, Johnny Cueto from the Reds. Although his record isn't the best, look at that ERA. It's just, the numbers are kind of crooked because he plays for Cincinnati, who doesn't score many runs for him. He has only 6-9 this year, but his ERA is right around 3, and he's really having a fantastic year.
Yeah, that was a huge win for them to pick him up, and it's really making Kansas City a big force to be reckoned with now. That's just watch out.
Yeah, another big trade, starting pitcher going the other way. Houston continuing to stay hot in that wild card race. They lead it right now, and then they pick up the A's, not really their ace, but a strong veteran leader, lefty. Scott Kazmir goes the other way, and in his first outing, he only goes 7 innings of no-run ball, only gives up 3 hits. So good to see the veteran go to somewhere where he can make a run in the playoffs in Houston.
Yeah, absolutely, and just solidified why he should be there. It was a great pickup.
Yeah, but are the Tigers going to make any moves? We're not sure. They're still unsure if they're in buy or sell mode. And really, I'm torn. Although it would make sense for them to sell, they're still only 4.5 games out of the last wild card spot. And with 2 months left to play, that's really nothing. But the team just really hasn't strung together victories this year. And it's frustrating to see because the talent's there. They just haven't put it together. Cabrera's been traveling with the team. He's close to coming back. And he wants to come back sooner than maybe his body will let him. But with him back in that lineup, who knows what could happen. He could just get hot. Castellanos has been hot. These guys they've all been getting there, and it's just the pitching's been holding them back.
Yes, it has. And that's another decision they're going to have to make is Miguel Cabrera actually healthy to get ready, or ready to come back? Is he healthy enough? I don't want them risking anything for a potential good season next year. If we have to lose them, clear this season's almost lost in my point of view. In my eyes, I feel that, if he has to sit longer than normal, that's fine. Get him healthy. I don't want this affecting him long term. So if we got to take him off the roster for a while, that's fine with me too. And it is also a season where, do you fold your cards? You don't have a good hand. Do you fold them and just worry about next year? It's just, the reason it's so shocking is for the past couple of years, we had worry about not going to the postseason. I mean, yes, we've had our scares, but for the most part, we really have been in the run for the thick of it. So I think that's hard for a lot of Tiger fans to understand, is the fact that there's a really good chance that we're not going to make it this year, and it's really hard for a lot of them to understand, or at least accept. So,
and that being the front office to be able to accept that, they're the ones that really don't even know what to do at this point. And I don't know what I would do. Part of me knows Price likely not coming back next year. You don't want what happened to Scherzer to happen to him, at least for the team's sake. You'd like to get something for him, but I just don't think what the Tigers want for him, they'll be able to get, because David Price is strictly a rental player. I would say teams he'd likely end up with next year to sign, the Cubs for me are number one. Joe Maddon's the manager, and he was the manager for David Price's whole career in Tampa. Chicago's a good team. They're competing this year. They have a good staff. And I think David Price would fit in perfectly. But I can't rule out Detroit because he said he wants to sign an extension here, and the team has said that they've had talks, but neither side is really close on a deal. So it's frustrating because you're not sure. You would like to have him because he's been the only consistent starter for the Tigers this whole year. And do you want to let that go? And 4.5 games out, are you going to get what you want for him? Another guy, Yoenis Cespedes, I think he's more likely to re-sign. With the origin of the players here, he fits in really well. They all seem to be clicking, at least off the field. On the field, I mean, no one's really clicked all together at the same time since the month of May. But Cespedes is a guy I don't know if you deal. I would deal Soria. His contract is expiring. He still has good numbers, although we've seen it firsthand. We're not sure if he really has been consistent this year. But when he first took over the closing role from Joe Nathan when he went down, Soria was like the savior. We're bowing down to him here with that slow curveball. He's striking guys out. But lately, his ERA has jumped. His whip has jumped. He's been pitching in a lot of high-pressure situations. And I still think he has value in the league. And I think he's the most likely guy to get moved, even if the Tigers are still in buy mode. And they might just kind of say, you know what, we're neutral, and we're going to try to add something that will help our team and still get rid of a key piece. That, to me, would make the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what you're saying as far as them not clicking, is that due to upper management problems? I mean, this is the first time, like I said, going back to what I was saying earlier, is we have an issue of not making the postseason. But if that was an issue prior to that before, it was always just the performance. Now it's more not only the performance of certain players or the lack thereof, it's also upper management. We're questioning Dave Dombrowski. We're questioning our own skipper. What are you going to do about that? And that's something that we really have to look at too. Are they in the right mind frame as far as helping the organization? I mean, there's a lot of talks about Dave Dombrowski leaving and possibly going to Anaheim. If you talk to any real hardcore Tiger fans, it's always another subject that's always brought up is the fact is Brad Ausmus going to be here next year? So not only do we have to look at our players' performance and possibly getting rid and selling up some of those, it's also the management. Where are they going to be? And that's not a good thing for an organization, especially considering the potential that they had all these past years and the places they went. So they might be just a year that we're under the gun, we're under the microscope, and I don't think we're really going to be thought of as that powerhouse that we might have been before.
I already think that ship has sailed, but I do think the organization is in rebuild mode, and that's from a standpoint of the front office personnel. I think that could clean house at the end of this year. But I don't think necessarily the players are. I still think there's guys you can build around. Obviously, Miguel Cabrera. You still have Victor Martinez for 3 more years. You have Ian Kinsler for 3 more years. You have Jose Iglesias for 3 more years. And that's a core right there in itself. I think you got to lock up J.D. Martinez. If you can get Yoenis Cespedes to re-sign, that's a great core of players. And obviously, Castellanos isn't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And he, of late, has been red hot. He's hitting .517 over the last 10 games with a lot of power. He hit that bomb on Saturday that is still going. It was literally out of Fenway Park, out of the entire stadium, onto the streets over the Monster. He had a mammoth last night to straightaway center field, although it was one of only 3 hits the Tigers had and the only run. It's just, that's a good core of guys. However, let's go to the pitching side. Is there a core? Is there anything? Is there camaraderie? Is there skill? Is there life? Is there a pulse? I'm not sure. That's the
important question right there.
Shane Green? Gangrene is more like what I'm thinking. If you're trying to make a playoff push, how can you possibly keep trotting Shane Green out to the mound who hasn't pitched into the 6th inning since April? The bullpen is spent, and they have been. They've been doing their hardest work, but when the starters, Alfredo Simon, Kyle Ryan, Justin Verlander, obviously Shane Green, these guys aren't pitching into the 5th, 6th inning, and then you have Alex Wilson, who's pitched every game for the last 8, I think, games. He's pitched 8 in a row. You have Blaine Hardy, who's spent. Bruce Rondon's been pitching a lot. Neftali Feliz has been out there a lot. I don't know if you can call it pitching. He's just been getting rocked. Soria's pitched a lot. They've all pitched a lot. Ian Kroll, and that's a guy you never want to be out there. I blame the starters for the bullpen's demise. And I don't know if you agree, but I really think it's a good argument.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you're not setting up a sturdy foundation, how do you expect to build, 10 more floors? I mean, it's initially, I really wanted maybe during the trading, we could have gotten one, maybe two strong pitchers to start out. And right now, we don't even have that sturdy bullpen anymore. So it's really, you really got to look around and just not panic, figure out something and put something together. Because right now, like you said, we don't have a sturdy foundation. And you're not going to win ball games if you don't even have a sturdy foundation. Yes, we have that core group of guys as far as offensively, but that can only do so much. You can only hit so many runs in. But if the relief is bringing runs in also, you're really never going to win a game.
Yeah, they're supposed to be relieving the starters, and it turns out they're relieving the other team of any stress they had going into the game. And they're pitching in high-stress situations. Even the starters, they're leaving guys on base, and then poor Neftali Feliz comes in with bases loaded. What do you think's going to happen? He's giving one up to the cheap seats out in right field, and someone's going away happy, and it's not the Tiger fans. No. It hasn't been even when the Tigers were doing well. Although at the beginning of June, both the team ERA was top 5 in the major leagues. And over the course of the last 7 weeks, they're now in the bottom 7, I think, bottom 10, 7 to 10 in ERA for a team. Justin Verlander's ERA is over 6. Shane Green's ERA is over 7. Anibal Sanchez, who has pitched great in his last 8 outings, he's 7-1 in his last 8 with an ERA under 2. His ERA is still 4.59. So how was it in his previous 8? Right. Elevated through the roof. David Price, ERA 2.38. Obviously, he's not the problem. Alfredo Simon, at the beginning of the year, he was 4-0 in contention to start the All-Star game. Since, he's 1-7. So it's just 1-8. Sorry, 1-8. He's 5-8 on the year. It's been rough. His ERA is over 5 now. There's no bailout other than David Price. Now, one could argue Anibal Sanchez because obviously he has what it takes. He's been there before. He just had a real struggle at the beginning of the year. But outside of that, there's no cutout number 3, 4, 5 starter. It's David Price, Anibal Sanchez, garbage. Yep. There's no one in the minors. Kyle Ryan's been up. Kyle Lobstein's been nursing a sore shoulder for the entire year. And he's been on the 15-day DL. I can't even speak. That's how the bullpen just got my mind racing. Starting pitching, defense. But he's been on the DL for a 15-day variety for the last 50 days. So it looks like a nagging injury that's not going away. And then you have Buck Farmer, who needs to stick to farming or something. I don't know. And Drew Varhagen, who came up and walked, I think he threw 9 straight balls in his outing before he was yanked. There's no bailout. And if they're still in buy mode, give up the farm, throw Buck in there, get a starter. We need a number 2 or a 3 starter, someone who can go up. Look at Cole Hamels. Twirled a no-hitter on Saturday for the Phillies, and likely his last start for Philly because he's probably going to be moved. Philadelphia's 33-63, dead last in the majors. It's going to be a heavy price, but I think very much worth it. He's another lefty. Great experience. He's more of a veteran now. I think he's right around 30 years old. But he's been there, done that. He's been to the World Series. He's won awards. He's been great. It was the most stress-free no-hitter I've ever seen against the surging Cubs at Wrigley. And I think he'd be a great fit. I don't think it's a realistic fit, but I think if the Tigers are serious about buying, they got to go all in.
Oh,
you can't just kind of half do it. Right. You can't do it. You have to go all in, or you got to sell your pieces. There's no in between.
Absolutely. And the great thing about the organization is we have an owner that likes to spend money. He's not afraid to spend money. And right now you almost need a fire sale. And for us to go and be able to pick him up would be tremendous. It would take a lot of stress off also. So if we could pick him up, that'd be fantastic. And there's no reason why we shouldn't. I mean, you could throw out, money issues or whatever. No, we have to deal with it because right now we have essentially nothing in our back pockets. No strong, going back to the word you used before, which is excellence core. And I mean, as far as the pitching is concerned. So yeah, we definitely have to make a move on him for sure.
And I even think if you're going to go all in, you still have to get bullpen help. And that's been the problem for years. Tigers' bullpen has been so inconsistent, it hurts. And you get 8 strong innings out of your starter. Look at Friday. Justin Verlander pitches into the 9th. They lose. Gives up 1 run. Tigers lose. Now that offensive struggle, I'm not blaming the bullpen for that. They went into the 13th inning before they lost. But it's just frustrating because you think your starters are turning in these, they're getting wins. Well, not so fast. You got Bruce Rondon coming in. You got Neftali Feliz coming in. Or you have Ian Kroll coming in. The list goes on. I think Bruce Rondon will be a good pitcher in this league. I just think he's still coming off of Tommy John surgery. He still had problems at the beginning of this year. Next year, if he's healthy, I think he's going to be a great 8th inning guy. However, I don't think he's the closer yet. Now, if he has a couple solid years of setting up, don't get me wrong, he's the closer of the future, but I still think the Tigers need that closer. Jonathan Papelbon said, I will only be traded to a team, I will only approve a trade if I will be their closer, which is why he was thinking about going to the Dodgers, or the Dodgers were pursuing him, but he would not be their closer. The Nationals were also looking at him. He won't be their closer. So that kind of whacks those out. However, he will be owed $13 million next season. He's still under contract. We thought $10 million was a lot with Joe Nathan. Mm-hmm. Papelbon's a veteran, although more of a younger veteran than Joe Nathan. Is he worth $13 million? If he pitches good, if he's a shutdown closer, like he is right now, he's got a 1.18 ERA. He hasn't blown a save yet this season. I'd pay him whatever he wants. But Detroit has a closer curse. I don't know what it is. No matter who comes here, they can't close games. Plain and simple.
Nope, no, they can't. And we do need a strong one. And going back to what you're saying, as far as Verlander's out, this is also I feel a mental thing. And if you have a high-paid player like Justin Verlander, who's actually starting to possibly turn things around, not getting back to the old Justin Verlander, but actually being a strong number 2 or 3, what good is that going to do mentally for a recovering athlete when he knows there's no stability behind him? So he has to go, and he's going to pitch lights out, or at least go as hard as he can, because he knows they don't have that bullpen, and that just risks an injury. I know it's a long, that's stretching for that, but the idea really isn't that far-fetched considering. So yeah, we do need that strong bullpen presence. That we're not always going to have a perfect offense. No team does. You never have the perfect combination of offense and defense in baseball. It's just it's too long of a season, and there's just too many variables that can go wrong. But you need strong portions of a bullpen or strong pitching. So when you don't have starters that are able to shut it down for the first 7 to 8 innings, you'll have a strong bullpen. So we need something there to stop that sinking ship. And like you said, it's always been a curse. But hopefully we can turn something around. And that's really all you can do.
We're going to go back in time a little bit to a trade that the Tigers made back in 1987. One that goes down in history as maybe one of the worst trades the Tigers have ever made. Tigers had a 19-year-old kid by the name of John Smoltz who couldn't find his way. He was having a horrible year down in Double-A. He couldn't pitch his way out of, anywhere. And Tigers were in the same spot they are now. They were a little bit out of first place behind Toronto back when they were in the East Division. And they needed a cutout starter. So they gave up John Smoltz in exchange for Doyle Alexander of the Atlanta Braves. And people say this was a horrible trade because obviously John Smoltz went on to do great things. And he was a guy who was a starter, then he was made a closer, then he was put back to a starter. And I think the worst thing you can do is turn a reliever into a starter. Like, look what they did they ruined Phil Koch's career a few years ago. Jim Leyland was 100% at fault for that. But that pushed aside. Doyle Alexander goes 9-0 with a 1.57 ERA down the stretch. The Tigers go to the World Series. They lose, but they go. And I just think that was a great trade for what they wanted at the time. John Smoltz is unproven. He was 19 years old. He's having a horrible year. Looked like a steal. Oh, Doyle Alexander comes in and goes 9-0. Didn't do anything after that, but John Smoltz did. That's the only reason why it looks bad. At the time, it was a great move for the Tigers. But the reason I'm bringing up John Smoltz is because 4 former players were inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, John Smoltz being one of them, 3 of which were pitchers, and they were great. Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, John Smoltz, and then Craig Biggio from Houston was also inducted. And those were 4 great players I watched growing up, and all of them you'd pick them on your, when you're playing MLB Slugfest or whatever. You're picking those guys. Randy Johnson would throw a ball and flames would be coming off the back. Remember when he killed that bird?
Yep.
With a pitch back in '99? It was just, these were just great baseball players.
Mm-hmm. And it's, on top of that, you're really starting to feel old when you see, your baseball heroes being inducted to the Hall of Fame. It's unsettling. And yeah, it was definitely a great class to be inducted this year.
One of the best in recent history.
Absolutely.
None of these guys were ever steroid users, and at least they were never brought up in the Mitchell report or the other reports when Rafael Palmeiro lied to the grand jury and Barry Bonds and all that. These guys were just purebred baseball players, and that's what separates them from the rest of the group. My favorite Pedro Martinez memory was when he threw Don Zimmer to the ground in that brawl. Throws an 80-year-old man to the ground on the pitcher's mound, but obviously they've settled those differences afterwards. But it was just funny to see Pedro just throw him down. And
good old-fashioned baseball.
That's a good old-fashioned Yankee-Red Sox rivalry. Another thing that's in the headlines this week is obviously the Deflategate thing's been going on with Tom Brady. He's appealing his 4-game suspension to Roger Goodell in the NFL. I personally feel Tom Brady is not the reason those balls were deflated. I don't think he should be suspended at all. I do think there should be some penalty on the organization, however, not just to specifically one player. I could see them cutting this down to 2 games, and Garoppolo starts those 2 games, and I think he's a very serviceable backup in the NFL. But the new rule in place now to somewhat solve the Deflategate problems for the future will be to monitor the inflation of the footballs. Each team will provide 24 balls, 2 hours, 15 minutes before the game to the official locker room, 12 primary balls, and then 12 backup balls. And there will be 2 officials that will be designated to keep that in order. And it's just, I don't know if it's the answer, because I think that there was always something that could be done. But it's definitely a step in the right direction.
It is. And unfortunately, I'm not happy with the NFL as far as the way they're taking control of this Deflategate, for whatever you want to call it. It's embarrassing. The way they've conducted themselves in the past couple of years with just the horrible actions that have been taken, whether it's dogfighting, spousal abuse, for them to penalize just one person over this, clearly it's not just one person that could pull off a scheme like this. And to punish your poster boy for your sport organization is just embarrassing. Obviously, to me, it's a slap in the face, especially if you're a New England fan or you're just a Tom Brady fan or a Michigan fan. It's not right. I'm not happy with it. And hopefully, yes, they did make a new plan as far as how the balls are supposed to be handled prior to the game, but it's embarrassing on their part. And I think it's just these past 2-3 years have just been an embarrassment for Roger Goodell.
It's been horrible for the NFL. The image, guys are knocking their wives unconscious and they're getting slaps on the wrist. And for something so petty, 4 games to be dished out to, like you said, the poster boy of the NFL. Greg Hardy pulls out assault rifles and threatens to kill his wife. And he's playing the next week against the Detroit Lions. And he gets like a small, like a $5 might as well be fine.
Yeah. And
then you get Ray Rice, who's now able to come back into the NFL. The whole thing with Adrian Peterson happening when beating his kids. And it's really been a black eye for the NFL. And something needs to get done. I don't know if Goodell is the answer. They might have to move on.
You're right. And it's like you said, but for something so small. I mean, I heard Aaron Rodgers doing an interview for ESPN, and he was saying it's such a small amount of error that the normal person wouldn't even notice it. A lot of quarterbacks didn't even notice it. It was just almost a crying game to say, you know what, this feels a little different. Let's try and at least pull this idea out of the hat and try and beat the Patriots with this. It's just so. infantile as far as in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you have a guy, injuring his wife, another one injuring his kids, another one injuring dogs. However you want to look at it, it's not hurting the game. Whereas the stuff that those other athletes were doing is not only hurting the game, it's obviously hurting someone else. So it's just embarrassing, and I'd be ashamed to be in that be in the upper echelon of the people that are making these rules and are punishing people. It's like I said, it's embarrassing.
It really is, and hopefully coming forward, we'll have some answers to the Deflategate thing as we prepare for next week's episode of the Wrap Up. As always, we appreciate you watching. Dan Myers, Nick Buckler. Thank you.